Welcome back to the Hill Update. I'm your host, Dean Allison, Member of Parliament for Niagara West. Joining me on the show today is Jay Goldberg, who is the Ontario Director for the Canadian Taxpayer Federation. So I guess let's talk about temporary tax breaks, and are these ever a good thing? I want to show a video quickly, but there's a temporary tax break that's going to go into effect in a couple days for a couple months. Your thoughts on that? And then I want to go to a clip to see us talking about it in Ottawa.
My number one thought on that is, the Prime Minister is talking about pre-prepared food, diapers, car seats. These are all things that are taxed. He's saying it's a good thing to take those taxes off for 2 months. Why in the world are we taxing these in the first place?
Okay, that's a great thought. Let's go to the clip from the House, and then let's talk a bit more about this 2-month tax holiday.
Turning temporary 2-month tax tricks won't save this desperate Prime Minister. After doubling housing costs, doubling the national debt, doubling food bank usage, now he's blaming Canadians for not feeling the vibe of this pricey gimmick. Now he's even threatening his own Liberal MP from Hamilton, East Stony Creek, for not supporting this vote-buying scheme. Instead of threatening MPs to take cents off Skittles, call a carbon tax election now so common-sense Conservatives can axe the tax for good.
Yeah! All right, so the threat to the Hamilton East Stony Creek member was around the $250. That was going to go to some people, but not all people. Wasn't going to go to seniors, all that kind of thing. And it's on hold right now, so it looks like it's not going to happen. Still going to happen, I think, provincially, as I understand it. Let's talk about that as a separate issue. One-time payments. I mean, does this really make sense? How does this actually benefit people that are struggling 12 months of the year, not just at Christmas?
Well, that's the exact point. And, listen, giving taxpayers some of their money back at one point is nice, but comprehensive long-term tax relief is the ultimate solution to affordability. You're not going to solve someone's affordability problem, affordability crisis, by a one-time check for $250 at the federal level or $200 here provincially. You need to have a long-term tax reduction plan, something like getting rid of the carbon tax, something like cutting the sales tax or income taxes that are going to be meaningful relief for people all throughout the year, every single month, because a one-time $250 check is not going to cut it.
Okay, so we got right now, there's PepsiCo. There's another part of this plan was to actually look at the GST off of certain goods.
Yep.
We can maybe talk about some of that. PepsiCo just sent this statement out. It said that we are ready to address the questions about holiday relief announced by the government of Canada. Basically, the memo says that we are not going to we're not going to go through. We're not going to deal with this. So it taxes some things. You mentioned that, not all things. It's very complicated for small businesses that have to adjust their registers. I mean, this was supposed to be a good news story, but I'm hearing small businesses are concerned. I'm hearing people are concerned. I'm hearing no one seems to be happy about this.
Well, especially when you look at small businesses, you're talking about a period that's about 60 days. And so they have to change. I think certainly the government didn't seem to realize how much effort it actually takes to program this, from figuring out which items are taxed, which are not, how you're going to program that for every small business. And every small business I talk to says this is actually going to be an absolute nightmare to implement. And again, it's a 2-month period. If you were talking about getting the tax off of things like diapers and car seats permanently, that's something small businesses would do once. It would make sense. It could be, something that's done over the long term, but to do it for 60 days and then have them put it back on. And, you wonder about the political flack the government's then going to get in February when this all comes back. And what's the Prime Minister going to say? All of a sudden, it makes sense to start taxing diapers again? So I think that's going to be a question the government is going to face in February.
Well, and one of the other things I heard as well, in terms of talking with the retailers, that certain games or certain puzzles or certain items, trading cards even, would be exempt and others wouldn't. So not only is it a nightmare to implement, but it's also a nightmare to manage, right? In terms of so who's on the hook if you don't collect the money, you don't deal with it? Like I said, PepsiCo, which represents Frito-Lays and Cheetos and Smart Food and stuff like that. We've got about 30 seconds left. Just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, it's just a complete mess. And, I have a colleague who happens to like adult Lego sets. And that's another thing they're figuring out. Okay, so for kids, we have to take the tax off. It's a children's toy. For the adult Lego sets, we're not going to. And yeah, you talk about these companies, and some of them are just going to say, it's so darn complicated to implement. It's costing us so much money to try to implement that we're just not going to do it. And we're going to have to face the music down the road. And, the onus is ultimately on the government here. You're imposing this on businesses so quickly that they don't have the time to adjust, they don't have the time to implement it, and then they're going to possibly be punished down the road for a
Right.
short-term political decision.
Jay, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you.
What we realize is that in order to be competitive, we probably should be looking at the money government spends. And it should never be just a one-time deal, but the government should always be looking for ways to make sure the burden is less on taxpayers. Thanks for joining me on the Hill Update. Until next time.